Hello my friends, thanks for joining me today for Sweet Pea Paper's Crafty Christmas in July 2024. This is a collaboration with 25 collaborators and I'm very excited and honored to participate again this year. I'm really looking forward to showing you each week what I made for the collaboration. Since this is the first video of mine for the collaboration, I want to share with you a few details and then I'm going to show you what I made and how I made it. Let me give you a peek at what I'm sharing for this week's and then I'll get into the juicy details of the collaboration. This week I'm sharing with you this faux antique ornament that I made, and there's a lot to tell you about this ornament because I made it partly by using my Cricut, and I messed up the selection of paper so it didn't cut it properly. That was operator error, of course. So I took lemons and I made lemonade. I think it turned out beautiful. The other mistake that I made was it printed out enough for me to make two, but I didn't realize that because I hate reading directions. So I ended up using everything on this one. So it made it like just extra, like over the top. But isn't that sort of what the Victorian era was? Like a lot of stuff was absolutely over the top. They had a fork for everything, like a shrimp fork, a dessert fork, just beyond a clam fork. I mean, they just, everything was over the top, opulent back in the day. And I think this sort of turned out the same. So let me tell you about the details of the collaboration, and then I'm going to show you this really up close in fine detail, and then I'm going to show you how I ended up making it, mistakes and all. All right, the information about the collaboration is that it's a full month long, July 1st to July 31st. If you want to jump in, absolutely jump in. Do some crafting in July, participate in the collaboration, and if you post to Sweet Pea Paper's Facebook page, she will enter you in a drawing. I'm going to have all the information about her drawing in my description box, her links in my description box, as well as the links of all the collaborators in the description box. I also wanted to mention to you that some of the artists in the collaboration have donated digital kits to the collaborators, and so they're going to be sharing their makes using those digital kits. Now, I chose to use my digital kit because I never have time to use my own digitals, and I thought this would be a great time for me to use my vintage Christmas digital kit, which is what I used to make my ornament and some of the other projects that I made this month. Sweet Pea Paper's drawing is going to be on August 1st. Each post that you make in her Facebook group counts as an entry. So you could post something every day if you wanted to have 31 entries. All right, for the rest of the information, check my description box. All the juicy details are going to be in there. But let's go ahead and get into this project so I can share with you this ornament and how I made it look antique. Because when I chose the ornament on the Cricut design, it didn't look anything like this one. So I really want to share with you how I did that. The first thing I did was use a very heavy, thick cardstock, and I printed out my digital kit onto white cardstock. Then I used my Cricut to cut out the shapes that I would need for this ornament. I should have programmed in the Cricut that the cardstock was thicker. I did not do that. And because of that, it didn't cut all the way through this very heavy duty cardstock. And it wasn't able to cut the little tiny pieces that come off of the ornaments. And so I thought to myself, how did I want to reprint everything and recut? Or did I want to try to use what I had already printed out, not waste it, but see what I could do with it? So you can see here I'm using my ink and my brush, and I'm going around the ornament. Obviously, I have not cut it out yet, but this way it sort of highlights the areas that were supposed to be cut all the way through. I hope that makes sense. So now I'm going in with a die cut that I have. I frequently use these as stencils if I like the pattern. I mean, why not? So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of pattern. I had decided to try to make this ornament look vintage or antique. So that's why I'm going in with this brown ink. It's already printed on my vintage kit, so it already has an older look. So now I'm just adding to it. Now I've taken this piece of paper that's printed on the other side, flipped it over, and you can see I'm going over it with my sharp tool here just to try to break up some of the paper because I can see where it was supposed to cut all the way through. It cut enough for me to be able to see it, but it didn't go all the way through. So I felt like if I went along some of those lines with that sharp tool, it would make it easier for me to cut it out. Now I did have to use my scissors on parts of it, but some parts of it pulled apart like it should. Now you just saw me using my marker to add dots. Those were supposed to be cut out, and they were not. And then this other piece that I'm drawing an outline on, that also was supposed to be cut out, and it did not get cut out. So I figured I would just go ahead and use the template, if you will, to sort of color it in. Now I've gone ahead and taken the largest piece, put it on a backing, and now I am combining the layers together. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I actually printed out enough for 2 of these ornaments, didn't realize that. So I put all of the papers together as one ornament. So it comes out extremely ornate and a bit over the top. I have some double stick squares. I have no idea where I got them, but I've had them for a really long time. So I figured I'd go ahead and use them up. They're pretty large, but so are these pieces. So I figured I'd go ahead and use them up. So here I am, I'm layering well, it's the third piece, but it should be the second piece. And I'm doing that twice, as I mentioned earlier. I think I made about 3 mistakes while I was making this ornament. One being, not telling the Cricut to go harder at the paper so that it would actually go all the way through. The other thing was, what was the other thing? Hold on. Oh yeah, using 2 ornaments worth of cut paper on one ornament. That was number 2. And then the third thing I did was I didn't realize the angle that my eyes were at as I was creating it. So you're going to start to notice as the layers go on, they're heavier at the top or the bottom, depending on how you are looking at the ornament. You'll see that in just a minute. I'll show you how that is. So actually, you can see it now. At the top of the ornament, everything's a little bit tighter, and at the bottom, there's a little more space. But I ended up making that work out just fine, and you'll see what I did towards the end. But for now, I've moved over to my round foam dots, which are thicker than the square ones, so they're going to pop out even further. And so I'm layering those on now. These are the last 2 pieces, paper pieces, that go on the ornament. There's some more stuff that's going to go on, but this is the paper pieces. And so where the little tiny dots were supposed to get cut out, I am adding some red ink, and then I'll be coming in with some green ink on the other one. On this one, I'm not using double stick pop dots. I'm using, I'm trying to think what it's called. It's an adhesive, and it is double stick, and it does have a little bit of a thickness to it, but it's not quite as thick as the foam. So I'm using those to add the last 2 paper pieces to the ornament.
Now I need to add the leaves, and the leaves do not look antique at all. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over them with a little bit of brown ink. And now I'm going over them with the stencil just to give them a little bit of interest, sort of mix things up on the leaves a little bit. So I think this is about the time when I started to realize a couple of things. One was that was an awful lot of leaves to put on one ornament, and that's when I think I realized, I think this was supposed to be for two, but I was already committed. Like, everything was already glued and taped together. So why not go with it, right? An extra opulent ornament. So I'm using my glue. It's Aleene's Tacky Glue. And you can see that I'm putting some of that on the leaves, not going over the top with it at all, just dabbing some on the bottom leaves where I want them to grab to the ornament. Then I also realized about this time how the ornament was, I don't want to use the word lopsided, but it was heavy to one side, let's say that. But I decided that I would embrace that and make that sort of the top of the ornament, and then the bottom could have more of that layered look. I've got the leaves attached, and now I've got to attach they're not cranberries, but the red berries. And so they too have a pattern, because remember I printed everything out on my my vintage digital kit onto that cardstock. So these also have a pattern. And I thought I'd like to make them a bit more red. So I'm just popping them on my ink pad, pressing them down with the back of one of my markers just to get that ink on there as good as I can. I don't necessarily want them to be solid. I don't mind if some pattern comes through, but I definitely wanted to add some red to them. Now it's time for me to go ahead and glue those onto the ornament, and I'm using a very small dab with my hot glue gun. And that way I don't have to wait for them to dry. They're so small, and I'm afraid if I use like a wet glue, they could slide around, and I don't want to take any chances on that. So I feel like my hot glue gun will dry much quicker. And so for me, that's how I'm going to add these little berries. There was no pattern or anything that I was following in order to place the leaves or the berries. I just was eyeballing it and placing them where I thought they would look nice. I got all the berries on. I feel happy with how I've placed them. Now you can look at the ornament and see that the leaves they're too bright. They don't really work, and that's okay, because I've grabbed some gold paint, and I'm going to start off by adding gold to the tips on basically everything on this ornament. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit some gold onto the leaves as well. As I'm working with the gold paint and I'm starting to get a feel for it, I'm starting to see how it's a little bit translucent, if you will. I'm getting comfortable with that, and I've decided to go ahead and cover the leaves completely with it, because you can still see through it, but it does add some richness to them. Since I got comfortable with using the gold paint, I thought I'd go ahead and add some glitter red paint. So this is a red paint, but it's got glitter in it. So usually those kinds of paints are also sort of translucent, I guess, so that the glitter can shine through. And actually I thought that would be perfect. So I added the red to the berries, and then I went in, you can see here, I'm just adding a little bit here and there just to emphasize some of the areas on the ornament. By the time I was finished with the red paint, I was feeling pretty confident with the paints. So I decided I'd go ahead and grab this green, and you can see it's not a bright green and it's not an olive green either. It's sort of in between. So I decided I'd go ahead and just put a strip of green right down the top of each leaf. And again, this just gives some color back into the ornament and gives a touch of detail without overwhelming it. Here's a side view of it before I add ribbon. I do end up adding ribbon with bows on it. I really ended up liking how this came out with all the extra layers to it. I just think it just made it extra special. I took it outside because I wanted you to see what it would look like in natural light. So here is a picture outside on my porch, and you can see the details in it. And here it has the bows on it as well as the hanger. Well, my friends, thank you so much for joining me for Crafty Christmas in July 24. I really appreciate you coming over and checking out my make. I will have another make next week. Next week, I will be sharing a Christmas time card journal flip. I don't really know what to call it. It's a flip with journaling space made out of time cards. I hope that you will come back and check that out as well. Also, don't forget about all the other collaborators. Everybody will be sharing at least one video per week in the month of July. Thanks for watching. See you soon.